All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the April HMIS user meeting. If you haven't already, please enter your agency name into the chat box so we know who is participating. For the meeting today, we have quite a few topics to cover. First, we're going to talk about the HMIS minimum participation requirements. We're going to go into changes to the coordinated entry assessments, talk about the new agency access appeals process, the COC Dashboard, client record requests, some new RIE program-specific data element dashboards, review housing notes, the system performance measures report, a new resource for EHV projects, the data and performance management meeting agenda, and then we will wrap it up with some Q&A. All right. So first, HMIS minimum participation requirements. So these minimum participation requirements were implemented with the new policies and procedures that were released earlier this year. And so this is just to kind of go over what those minimum participation requirements are, as well as how this is going to be implemented. So most of the minimum participation requirements involve HMIS and your activity in HMIS. And so we do have a dashboard available for you to review this activity. There are also a few requirements related to other activity, not specifically in HMIS, so we're going to go over both of those. First, we'll talk about the requirements for activity in HMIS. So moving forward, 211OC will be conducting a review of each agency on a quarterly basis to make sure they are in compliance with these requirements. And so in terms of HMIS activity, the first thing is each agency has to have at least one active user. Each agency also has to have at least one active enrollment, as well as activity in HMIS in the past 30 days. So this can be a variety of things. It could be entering or updating enrollments, or exits, or services, or assessments, or files. And each agency also has to have at least one active agency administrator in HMIS at the time of the review also. And then a few other requirements for the agencies. Agencies with housing projects are required to participate in the HIC and sheltered pit as appropriate for whatever project types they have. Agencies are required to have staff representation at least one user meeting a quarter. So congratulations for those of you that are on, you're already succeeding there. And the agency has to pass the HMIS audit every year when that occurs. So like I mentioned, we are going to be completing a review of these items on a quarterly basis. For the 4 items on the left side of your screen, we do have dashboards that are available in HMIS now for you to review. So this is a sample of what that will look like. When you go into HMIS, the dashboard will look like this, and it is telling you how many active users that you have, as well as how many of those are agency administrators. So that's already 2 of the requirements I mentioned. It is telling you by project how many active enrollments you have. And the bottom section is telling you about your agency's HMIS activity. So you'll be able to see by project how many enrollments were entered or updated in the previous month by project, how many services, how many exits, how many files, and how many assessments. And so in terms of the minimum participation requirements, if This active users chart is not blank. You pass the minimum participation requirement for having active users. If you have at least one agency administrator listed, you also pass. If you have active enrollments here, you pass that requirement. And then if any of these 5 looks have information in them, so you have data on any of these 5, then you also pass the requirement for HMIS activity. And so some of you are participating in both data entry for your own projects, as well as participating in coordinated entry. So we also have a dashboard available to look at your coordinated entry activity. It's very similar to the previous dashboard I just showed you, but it's specific to that project. So this is also available in HMIS for both families and individuals. And in order to run this coordinated entry dashboard, you need to be under the appropriate agency that's managing that coordinated entry process. So for individuals, you'll need to be under County of Orange. And for families, you'll need to be under the Family Solutions Collaborative. And when you pull the dashboard, there's one called family and one called individual. When you pull the dashboard, it will show all agencies that are participating in coordinated entry, but you can filter by your own agency just to see your data. And so this first look that's looking at active users will tell you how many users at your agency have access to that coordinated entry system. This is just the additional agency access. So if you'll recall, your users have access to your agency, that's their primary agency. And then in order to participate in coordinated entry, they have to have additional agency access to either the Family Solutions Collaborative or County of Orange. And so this number here is telling you how many of those users at your agency have that additional agency access. The active enrollments bar is telling you how many active enrollments your agency is marked as the access point for either the family or individual coordinated entry project, whichever dashboard you're running. And then this bottom section will tell you your agency's activity in relation to coordinated entry. So how many enrollments have you entered or updated, files, assessments, services, and exits. So again, these dashboards are available in HMIS now if you're interested. And our 211OC will be starting the minimum participation review this month. And we'll be notifying the agencies of their results and letting you know if there's any areas where you don't pass the minimum participation requirements. We'll be providing like knowledge-based articles or other information on where you can go to, complete those entries or enrollments or complete training for users if you don't have any active users. So this is to help the agencies meet these requirements. And if there are agencies that are regularly not meeting these requirements and not participating in HMIS in the way that has been, approved with the policies and procedures, the agency may be reviewed by the Agency Access Working Group to determine if the agency should continue to participate in HMIS. I'm going to take a minute to see if there are any questions before I move on. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm going to keep going. Okay, the next update is in regards to the coordinated entry assessments. So for those of you that are participating in coordinated entry, you know that historically We've been using the individual and family VI SPDATs to complete that assessment data entry and to add clients to the community queue. Oh, hold on, I got a question. Are you saying participation in CES is a requirement, or that if the agency does have access to CES, then they need to meet those requirements? Participation in CES is not a requirement. This is going back to the minimum participation requirements. So no, participation in CES is not a requirement, but there are some agencies that are only participating in CES. And so for our review, I'll go back here, for example, we're looking at, for each agency, if they have any active enrollments. So it could be possible that under their own agency, they have no active enrollments because they're only participating in coordinated entry. So we are looking at this first dashboard, there'll be no data here, but under the coordinated entry dashboard, they should have data here in enrollments, because we're trying to see if the agency is entering data into HMIS. So we're considering both dashboards. It's not, they don't have to have activity in both dashboards. They have to have activity in at least one dashboard. All right. Okay, so going back to coordinated entry assessments. The individual and family VI SPDATs are no longer in use for coordinated entry, and instead have been replaced with the individual and family CES assessments. These assessments are available now in Clarity. So when your client enters the coordinated entry project, you will go to the assessment screen under the enrollment, and you will have to select the assessment in order to complete it and then add the client to the community queue. So on the assessment screen, you will see the individual CES assessment or the family CES assessment, and you'll click on the start button to review that assessment and complete it. Now the assessment is very short, and it is the same for both individuals and families. So you'll enter the date of the assessment, as well as the location, which is a city, the type, which is like crisis assessment or housing assessment. For our purposes, it should be housing assessment. Or maybe that's the level, but one of them is, I think the type is the type of assessment that was completed. So if it was like on the phone or in person. And then the bottom section of the assessment is asking, of the opportunities that the household is eligible for, what are they interested in? And these questions are not new, they've already existed. So you should be used to asking your clients these questions, but you'll just enter the check boxes for whichever housing opportunities they are interested in. And then the private checkbox down here, you usually can just ignore this. This is just limiting the assessment to users that have access to the agency, whether or not they'll be able to see the assessment. Since coordinated entry is shared across multiple agencies, this doesn't really apply. So usually this checkbox can just be left alone. But this is what the new assessments look like. If you already have clients on the coordinated entry community queue, you don't need to worry about this change. Your VI SPDATs are still in there. If you want or need to review them and it doesn't impact any work that's already gone on to get them on the community queue, they're still in the queue. This change just applies to new assessments moving forward. We also do have paper forms of the new assessment forms. There's a link on the slide, and we'll also put it in the meeting minutes for those of you that are completing paper forms. And the coordinated entry reports, have already been updated to incorporate these new assessments. So you should be able to see them depending on whatever report it is that you're running. If you do come across any issues with the reports, you can always enter a ticket with HMIS Help Desk and we can look at that for you. And I think that's it. So I'm going to stop again for questions. I'm not seeing any questions on the coordinated entry assessment, but I do have one about, oh, hold on just a second. I did get a CES question. Does that mean there are several fields to include both assessments? So this is in regards to reports. So it depends on the report. If the report includes specific fields, then these will be on there. Many of them do not, but the coordinated entry reports have filters that only include specific assessments. And so those filters have been updated to include the new individual and family CES assessments. All right. So going back to the minimum participation requirements question, when you mean active user, do you mean they need to have a caseload or do they just have to be doing data entry specifically for agency administrators? So for active users, we just mean you have users with an HMIS account that can log into Clarity. So they don't necessarily have to have a caseload. It's just, do they have a user account that they can get into Clarity with right now? And keep in mind that users have to log into HMIS every 60 days in order for their accounts to remain active. So keep that in mind as well. Your agency administrators have to log into HMIS at least every 60 days in order for their HMIS account to stay active. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So, but if you do have questions about either of those, feel free to put them in the chat. We can always come back to them. Diana.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be going over the HMIS policies and procedures update. So we have a new appeals process for agency applications. Agencies that are denied access to HMIS by the Agency Access Working Group may request an appeal. Appeals must be submitted to the HMIS Help Desk, and the HMIS lead will complete the agency access process review and determine whether or not the review process was followed properly. Once a decision has been made, the decision cannot be appealed, but agencies can access that have been denied access to HMIS may reapply in the future if they can effectively address the reasons for their initial application that was denied.
All right, we got a question. Will this presentation be sent out to the agencies? Yes, we will be sending out the slides as well as the recording and meeting minutes for the presentation.
Okay. So next slide, please. So the COC dashboard will be published for the Q1 timeframe next week. This will include the reporting period of January 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2022. The dashboard contains information on clients who are active in any project type in HMIS or were contacted 211 for information and referrals during the reporting period. So keep an eye out for that next week. We will be posting a notification on our website that the COC dashboard is live.
All right, Heather.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be covering client record requests. So you may encounter a situation where a client is requesting a record of their data in HMIS. All clients have the right to review their HMIS data, which would include data on the client's profile screen, the release of information, their enrollment history, and any projects that participate in OC HMIS, and a list of all uploaded client documents. So this information may only be requested by the client, with few exceptions like subpoenas. A process has been put in place to secure this information for the client using the following steps. So first, the client will contact an agency participating in OC HMIS from whom they've been previously served. Please do not direct clients to contact 211OC directly. Second, the agency administrator at that agency will locate the client's unique ID in HMIS and submit a ticket to the help desk to request the client record request dashboard for the client within 5 business days of the request. In the ticket, you'll state that a client is requesting their client record request dashboard and include the client's HMIS ID only, no names or other identifying data. So also decide with the client when and how they'll receive the dashboard, keeping in mind that it may include sensitive client information such as name, social security number, and their current location. So this data should be reviewed with the client in a private location. Please review the article on protecting client data for additional information about protecting client C, and we'll provide a link in the meeting minutes posted later. So the next step is that the HMIS help desk will receive the request and send the dashboard to your agency's Dropbox. The agency administrator will then deliver the dashboard and the method decided upon with the client and then review it with them. Additionally, you may direct the client to the HMIS client record request page, which contains information and instruction oriented specifically towards clients. So we're going to take a look at the dashboard. Erin, would you please advance the slide? So this dashboard has 4 sections. At the top, it has a client profile section, which contains name, date of birth, social, anything that was put on the profile screen. At the bottom is the release of information section, and that includes the method and the date by which the ROI was received. It includes the agency name. And then at the top right is the enrollment history, and that includes all project enrollments for the client, the agency, project name, start and exit dates. And then finally, there's a client documentation section that lists any files which were uploaded into HMIS. So further details on the process are provided in the client records request knowledge base article, and all links will be provided in the meeting minutes posted on the OC HMIS website after this meeting.
Also, just wanted to mention that we also have a page on OC HMIS for clients regarding this process. So if you do have clients that want more information, or it also includes information for them on how to protect their privacy once they have the dashboard, you can refer them to that page, and it is on, we'll include it in the minutes, and it's on our OC HMIS homepage now. All right, Elizabeth.
Good morning, everyone. So we have created a dashboard for RIE funded projects. So you'll see that there's 2 dashboards for entry data and exit data. We also created 2 separate reports for details client level data. Could we advance to the next slide? So the RIE completeness dashboard format is similar to the universal data element completeness dashboard. In this dashboard, you will see an overview of the project under your agency and the data quality of each data element. And please keep a note that the RIE exit dashboard will be split into 2 dashboards to ensure the dashboard runs properly and includes all exit data elements. And then, yeah, can we go to the next slide? So this is an example of what the details report looks like. It's a client level data so that you can find those data errors to make corrections. We also put a link underneath on the slide so that you could review the data elements collected by RIE funded projects.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Armando, oh, hold on. For family households, is the head of household able to request the client record for their minor children? How would this work? Yes, so head of house, adults are allowed to request records for their children or children that they have guardianship over. The reason that the client should be contacting the agency that they've been served by is so that the agency can verify the client's identity and also verify that, you know, a client is the parent of another client. So that is part of what your agency should be confirming, but yes, they can request a dashboard for their child. All right, Armando.
Hi, good morning, everybody. We just wanted to share a refresher with everybody about the housing notes as they are used in HMIS. Our housing notes, they should be used for information that's related to housing any client. These notes are to be shared with the COC in order to streamline the housing process for clients and to be coordinated and the coordinated care amongst multiple agencies. Housing notes are viewable by other agencies. And you can reference our knowledge-based article for housing notes that will be able to outline the steps in case you are ever trying to review the housing notes for a client that were entered by a different agency. The housing notes should be following the PERP format, PERP standing for Purpose, Intervention, Response, and Plan. On the knowledge-based article for housing notes, you can also find a few examples of do's and don'ts for housing notes as they're following the PERP format. And then on the screen there, you can see one of the knowledge-based articles, including a recording for case notes and how housing notes are entered in HMIS. On the screen, you can see a screenshot that shows the Provide Services tab, which is the way to go about entering housing notes for a client. The Provide Services tab there, not to be confused with the Notes tab, which you can see a few options down to the right. Some case managers will get mixed up between these two and think that a housing note would be entered under the Notes tab. However, we just want to remind folks that it is entered in as a service under the Provide Services tab.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm gonna keep going. Elizabeth?
I wanted to thank everyone's effort and support with corrections related to the system performance measure. The HMIS team recently updated the year-over-year system performance measure report, and which you can access on our website. Could I have access to share?
Oh. Yeah, hold on just a second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let me try to share my screen. Actually, Erin, I'm having issues sharing. Do you mind sharing the report?
Sure.
So to access this report, you'll go to our website and you'll click reports to go to the system performance report. So on the first page, you'll see an overview of the system performance measurement and explanation of each measures. Before we move on, I want to note the 2 boxes at the bottom. So the light orange box will give you details regarding our data compared to California and the rest of the US. The data is reviewing 2020 data because the data for 2021 has not been published for all communities yet. And for the light box, text box, you will see some information regarding data quality that would affect our system measures. We will quickly go over each measurement for the next couple of pages. So for measure 1, there are 2 separate measures that looks at the length of homelessness within each project type. This measure is calculating the client's self-reported date of homelessness and will account for their current episode and not their entire history. Can we move on to measure 2? So measure 2 is return to homelessness. This page will give you an overview of the whole COC as well as the breakdown of each project type. Measure 3 is looking at count of homeless person. The first looks at the count of persons counting using point in time data. This comes from the PIT data that we submit to HUD, which is the projects participating in the HMIS and projects that don't. This is what we're currently working on during our HIC and PIT reporting period. The unsheltered PIT counts occurs every odd year, so we use the same count for each even year. Please note that in 2021, the unsheltered count did not occur, so we used the count from the previous unsheltered PIT count. The second graph is the unduplicated total shelter client count using HMIS data. And for measure 4, you will see it's a measure of increasing income for adults in COC funded projects. You can see that we have a slight increase in stayers with increased income. And then we'll move on to measure 5. Measure 5 is looking at clients experience homelessness for the first time in HMIS, and it's broken down by each project type. And then we'll advance to the next and final page, which is measure 7, and it has 3 metrics that looks at successful exit by each project type. Again, this report is on our website, and we will include the link in our meeting minutes so that you can review the report in greater detail.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions.
HUD recently published the Emergency Housing Voucher Guide with the purpose of providing an overview of the EHV operating requirements, outlining consideration for public housing authorities in the design of their EHV programs and to highlight best practices. This guide is a helpful resource for PHAs, COCs, and victim service providers. The guide goes into details regarding partnerships, referrals, use of service fee, housing search, and application process. So we will also link the guide in our slide as well as a meeting minute so that you can take a deeper dive into the guide and review that.
Linda?
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to go over this month's data meeting agenda with everyone. So this month we will be going over the agency setup review and also the permanent supportive housing and other permanent housing project performance report. Please use this information below to access the meeting on Thursday, April 14th from 1:30 to 3. This data, this information will be included in the meeting minutes that we will be sending out after the meeting, and we hope to see you all there.
All right, great. So we have made it through our agenda for the day. We do have some time for Q&A if anyone has any questions on any of the topics we've covered or anything else related to HMIS. So you can either unmute yourself if you have a question or you can type it into the chat. We will be sending out meeting minutes, the PowerPoint slides, and the recording from this meeting to everyone. And if you haven't already, please enter your agency name into the chat box so we know who is participating. And we will just wait a couple minutes to see if any questions come in. I got a question. Can we receive the client level details of the HIC report as pulled by 211? Yes, you have access to that now also. It is the, it's under the HIC section on the data analysis tab in HMIS. The report is called Active Clients in for like rapid rehousing, other permanent housing, and permanent supportive housing. That is what we're looking at to see your active clients for permanent housing projects. You can also submit a ticket to us or respond to your HICPIT ticket, and we can help you with that as well.
Erin?
Yes, I'm Martha.
Hi, this is Martha. Just to kind of build on on Catherine's question about if a head of household could ask for the records of a child, what about whether the head of household could ask for records of any adult member that's in her household? So the head of household, I guess the question is, so a head of household can request a client record for anyone in her household? Not just
it's only minor children, so other adults have to request their own record.
Okay, even if it's like an adult child, like a 20-year-old or 19-year-old child, it has to be that person. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right, I'll wait just one more minute to see if any other questions come in. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so we're going to end the meeting. Thank you again so much, everyone, for attending, and we will talk to you next month. The next meeting is scheduled for May 4th at 10 a.m. and we will be sending out the agenda a couple days before, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.